At 10:17 on the morning, I was supposed to become Ryan Blake's wife. The courthouse clerk called our names for the third time, and the chair beside me remained empty. "Miss Carter?" the clerk asked gently, as though lowering her voice might make the humiliation less public. "Would you like us to wait another few minutes?" I stared at the closed double doors at the back of the ceremony room. Every time footsteps passed in the hallway, hope rose in my chest before collapsing again. Ryan was 32 minutes late. Ryan had never been late for anything important. Ryan arrived 15 minutes early for dinner reservations, checked into airports 3 hours before flights, and once made me leave a Christmas party before dessert because snow had been predicted after midnight. "He's coming," I said, though no one had asked. My godmother, Margaret Carter, reached across the empty chair and covered my hand. Margaret had been my mother's closest friend, my guardian after my parents died, and the closest thing I had left to family. At 67, Margaret still wore her silver hair in a blunt chin-length bob and still had the kind of eyes that made dishonesty feel embarrassing. That morning, those eyes held only worry. "Emma," Margaret whispered. "Call him again." I already did. I looked down at the phone hidden beneath my small bouquet of white roses. 11 unanswered calls, 6 unread messages sent by me. No response from Ryan. Around us, the handful of people invited to the civil ceremony avoided looking directly at the abandoned bride. 2 employees from Carter Books pretended to examine the courthouse ceiling. Ryan's older brother, Daniel, stood near the window with his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in an angry whisper. Even Ryan's mother had stopped insisting there must be traffic. The ivory dress I had chosen because Ryan said a courthouse wedding should be simple suddenly felt too tight around my ribs. "Ms. Carter," the clerk said again, "we have another ceremony scheduled at 11. A young assistant hurried forward to collect the folder containing our marriage license. Her hands were trembling. The folder slipped. Papers scattered across the floor, and the glass vase beside the clerk's desk tipped toward her. I moved before anyone else did. I caught the vase against my chest, spilling cold water down the front of my dress, then crouched to help gather the papers. "I'm so sorry," the assistant said, her face turning scarlet. "Please, I didn't mean—" "You didn't do anything wrong," I told her. "It's only water." The clerk frowned at the girl. "Maya, you need to be more careful." "She was trying to help me," I said. "Please don't blame her." Maya looked at me as if kindness from a humiliated woman made less sense than cruelty. While I placed the final sheet back inside the folder, the ceremony room doors opened. Every person in the room turned. My heart stopped. It was not Ryan. The man standing in the doorway was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a black suit so precisely fitted that the severe lines seemed less like clothing and more like armor. Dark hair was swept back from a face that looked carved rather than born, all hard cheekbones, controlled expression, and a shadow of stubble along a sharp jaw. He appeared to be in his mid-30s, younger than the fear that moved through the room before him. The courthouse security officer stationed near the hall straightened. Ryan's brother lowered his phone. Even the clerk seemed to forget that another wedding was waiting. The stranger's gaze moved across the fallen papers, the empty chair, the water staining my dress, and finally settled on my face. He looked at me with an intensity that made the room feel suddenly smaller. A second man stood behind him, older and heavier, with the stillness of someone who watched exits for a living. "Mr. Romano," the clerk said. The name traveled through the room like a warning. Matteo Romano. I knew the name. Everyone in Belhaven knew the name, though most people lowered their voices before speaking it. The Romano family owned hotels, security companies, construction firms, restaurants, and enough city property to influence which neighborhoods prospered and which disappeared beneath new glass towers. There were other stories, too. Stories about private clubs without signs, judges who returned Matteo Romano's calls, men who betrayed his family and moved out of the country without saying goodbye. Ryan once described Matteo as a businessman whose cleanest office probably had blood beneath the carpet. Matteo walked into the room without acknowledging the fear around him. He stopped several feet in front of me. His eyes were almost black. "Emma Carter," he said. He did not ask my name. He already knew it. A chill passed over my wet skin. "Do I know you?" I asked. Something changed in his expression, too slight to name. "Not yet," Margaret rose and moved closer to me. What do you want with Emma? Mateo's gaze shifted to Margaret, and for the first time his control fractured. His eyes narrowed as if he recognized something he had not expected to see. Before Mateo could answer, my phone vibrated against the bouquet. Ryan's name lit the screen. Relief crashed through me so hard my knees nearly weakened. It's him, I answered immediately. Ryan, where are you? No voice came through, only a recorded message. Emma, I'm sorry. I can't do this. Ryan sounded calm. Too calm. In the background, I heard an airport announcement. I should have told you sooner. But every time I tried, you turned everything into another crisis you needed to save. The bookstore, the employees, Margaret, every stranger who walked through that door with a sad story. There was never room for us. There was only whatever broken thing needed you next. I won't spend my life coming second to people who take from you because you don't know how to say no. Don't call me. By the time you hear this, I'll be gone. The message ended. I remained frozen with the phone against my ear. Margaret said my name, but her voice sounded far away. I had imagined many reasons for Ryan being late. An accident, a flat tire, a medical emergency. I had not imagined Ryan recording his abandonment like a business memo. Ryan's mother began crying. Daniel swore and rushed into the hallway. The courthouse clerk quietly closed the ceremony folder. My phone vibrated again. This time the notification came from the bank. A transfer of $286,000 had been completed from the Carter Books restoration account at 9:48 that morning. I stared at the number until the digits blurred. That account held the insurance settlement and community investment money we had raised to repair the bookstore after a winter pipe burst destroyed the second floor. The money belonged to the business. Some belonged to local investors. Some had been reserved for employee wages during construction. Ryan had managed the financial side of the restoration because Ryan was a certified consultant and because I had trusted the man I planned to marry. No, I whispered. I opened the banking application. The balance showed $312. Margaret took the phone from my hand. What did he do? He took it. My mouth had gone dry. He took everything. Mateo did not look surprised. That frightened me more than the missing money. Ryan Blake didn't only abandon you, Miss Carter, Mateo said. He left your name on documents that could put you in prison. The room disappeared around me. What documents? Loan guarantees, vendor contracts, and a declaration stating that you personally authorized every transfer from the restoration account. Mateo looked toward the older man behind him. Gabriel. The man stepped forward and handed Mateo a slim gray folder. Mateo held it out to me. I did not take it. How do you have that? Because Ryan Blake has been moving money through companies connected to one of my enemies. Your enemy? My voice broke. What does any of this have to do with you? More than you understand. Mateo glanced at the strangers around us. This is not a conversation you should have in public. I'm not going anywhere with you. The answer came automatically, driven by fear rather than reason. Mateo did not move closer. He did not raise his voice. Then take the folder, call an attorney, and wait for the authorities to decide whether you are a victim or Ryan's partner. He placed the folder on the empty chair. Or come to the conference room across the hall and learn what happened before someone arrives to arrest you at your own wedding. Margaret opened the folder. I watched Margaret's expression change as she examined the first page. Emma, Margaret said quietly, your signature is on this. I didn't sign anything. I know. Margaret turned another page. But it looks like you did. 20 minutes later, I sat in a courthouse conference room still wearing my wet wedding dress. Margaret sat beside me. Mateo occupied the chair across the table, while a silver-haired attorney introduced himself as Noah Grant and carefully explained that Noah represented Mateo, not me. Noah placed a business card in front of Margaret. You should contact independent counsel before signing anything, Noah said. Mr. Romano has instructed me to make that clear. I'm not signing anything, I replied. Mateo watched me without blinking. Ryan used your electronic signature on 3 loans, Noah continued. The total liability is just over $2 million. Most of that money was transferred through a consulting company registered to Ryan, then moved into a development group controlled by Victor Salerno. I recognized that name too. Victor Salerno was another businessman people discussed in cautious tones. Victor and Matteo had once appeared together at charity dinners. In recent months, newspapers had written about a rivalry between their construction companies. Why would Ryan do that? I asked. Money, Matteo answered. Access, cowardice. Choose the explanation that hurts least. You knew? Anger gave me something solid to stand on. You knew Ryan was stealing from me? I learned the scope of it last night. And you didn't call me? I had Gabriel searching for Ryan. I intended to confront Ryan before the ceremony. Matteo's jaw tightened. Ryan left the city 40 minutes before you entered this courthouse. You could have warned me. Would you have believed a man you had never met over the fiancé you planned to marry? I opened my mouth and found no honest answer. Matteo leaned back. Ryan expected the fraud to become visible after the wedding. By then, Ryan planned to be gone, and you would be legally tied to documents carrying your name. Investigators would see a failing family business, a large insurance payment, your signature, and a husband who vanished. You would look less like an abandoned bride and more like an accomplice. Margaret squeezed my hand. Can you prove Emma didn't sign those papers? Eventually, Noah said. But eventually may come after frozen accounts, public charges, and the closure of Carter books. How long? I asked. Months, Noah replied. Possibly longer. My parents had bought Carter books 37 years earlier. They had raised me in the apartment above the shop, surrounded by old paper, floor polish, and the bell over the front door. After their deaths, the bookstore became more than property. It was the last place where my mother's handwriting still marked inventory cards, and my father's pencil notes remained inside repair manuals. 22 employees depended on it. A free reading program met there every Saturday. Local writers held launches in the back room. Ryan knew exactly what losing it would do to me. Matteo folded his hands on the table. I can stop the lenders from acting. I can freeze the companies holding the fraudulent debt. I can protect the store and your employees until Noah proves what Ryan did. Why would you? Because I need something from you. There it was. The price. I pulled my hand from Margaret's and sat straighter. What? Matteo looked directly at me. Marriage. For several seconds, I thought humiliation and shock had damaged my hearing. Excuse me? I need a wife. You need protection. Noah shifted slightly, but Matteo continued before anyone could interrupt. My family council has spent the past year negotiating an alliance with the Salerno organization. Victor expects me to marry his niece Bianca Salerno next Saturday. The marriage would give Victor access to Romano properties, voting authority in several companies, and influence over members of my family I will not place under his control. So tell him no. I have. Matteo's expression remained cold. Victor interprets refusal as negotiation. A marriage to someone else ends the matter publicly and permanently. I laughed once, a brittle sound I did not recognize. You walked into a courthouse, found a bride without a groom, and decided the solution was to take his place. No? Then why me? Because you are already involved in the conflict. Because marriage to you gives me legal grounds to treat Ryan's attack on Carter books as an attack on my household. Because my name will make every lender and investigator move more carefully. Matteo paused. And because you were never a stranger to me. The room became very quiet. What does that mean? It means I know who you are. You know my name. I know you kept Carter books open during the pandemic by delivering orders yourself. I know you sold your parents' lake cabin to preserve employee health insurance. I know you run a Saturday reading program and refuse to charge families who cannot afford the registration fee. I know Ryan repeatedly asked you to sell the store, and I know you refused. I stared at him. You investigated me? Yes. For how long? Long enough. I stood so abruptly the chair struck the wall. No. Margaret rose with me. Emma. He has a file on my life and thinks that makes this reasonable. I looked at Matteo. You're insane. Possibly. His calmness made me angrier. But I am also the only person in this building who can keep Victor Salerno from owning your parents' store by the end of the week. You expect me to marry a criminal because my fiancé robbed me? Noah spoke before Matteo could answer. Ms. Carter, nothing can happen today without your voluntary consent. If you wish to leave, you may leave. I can also provide the names of 3 independent attorneys who are not connected to Mr. Romano. And if I say no? I asked Matteo. His eyes held mine. Noah will still give your attorney copies of the evidence against Ryan. I will not hide information because you refuse me. That was not the answer I expected. But you won't protect the bookstore. I will delay Victor where I can. I will not start a war over property belonging to someone who wants no connection to me. Matteo's voice softened by a fraction. I do not make promises I cannot enforce. Margaret asked the question I was afraid to ask. What kind of marriage? Noah opened another folder. 1 year, unless both parties choose to extend it. Separate property. Separate bedrooms if Ms. Carter requests them. No requirement of physical intimacy. Ms. Carter retains control of her business, income, personal movement, and legal representation. Mr. Romano assumes temporary responsibility for the disputed debts while the fraud investigation proceeds. Either party may end the agreement under the conditions listed. No public humiliation, I said. The words left my mouth before I had decided to negotiate. Matteo's gaze sharpened. Explain. You don't parade other women in front of me. You don't let your family treat me like something you bought. You don't touch me for cameras without asking. Agreed. I keep working at the bookstore. Agreed. Margaret remains protected, but Margaret does not become your prisoner. Agreed. I have my own lawyer. Required. And if you lie to me about anything that affects my safety or freedom, I leave. Matteo was silent long enough to make me think I had finally found the condition he would reject. Agreed, he said. Noah gave Margaret the list of independent lawyers. I called one from the courthouse bathroom while Margaret stood guard outside the stall. Her name was Evelyn Park, and after 45 minutes of reading documents, challenging Noah, and asking me questions in private, Evelyn confirmed that the contract was unusual, severe, and legally protective in ways she had not expected. This man has structured the agreement so you can leave with your business intact, Evelyn said. That does not mean you should marry him. It means the trap, if there is one, is not obvious in the contract. That's reassuring. Emma, you were abandoned less than 2 hours ago. You are in shock. I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Water had dried in streaks across my dress. My makeup had smudged beneath my eyes. I did not look like a woman capable of making a life-changing decision. I looked like someone waiting for the next person to decide what happened to her. If I don't do this, Carter Books could close. Yes. My employees could lose their jobs. Yes. And Ryan could make me look responsible. Yes. Then maybe this is not the decision I wanted. But it is still my decision. At 1:13 that afternoon, the county clerk issued a new marriage license. At 2 o'clock, in the same ceremony room where Ryan had left an empty chair beside me, I married Matteo Romano. Margaret stood as my witness. Gabriel stood for Matteo. There were no flowers except the damaged bouquet I had refused to throw away. There were no vows beyond the legal words required. When the clerk instructed us to face each other, Matteo turned with the controlled stillness that seemed built into him. Do you, Matteo Alessandro Romano, take Emma Claire Carter to be your lawful wife? I do. His voice did not tremble. Mine did. Do you, Emma Claire Carter, take Matteo Alessandro Romano to be your lawful husband? I looked into the face of a feared man I had met only hours earlier. Somewhere beyond the courthouse walls, Ryan was flying away with money stolen from my family. Somewhere in the city, Victor Salerno believed my life belonged to a scheme I had never seen. I tightened my fingers around the bouquet. I do. The clerk pronounced us married. Matteo did not kiss me. Matteo offered his hand. I stared at it before placing my fingers in his. His palm was warm, his grip steady but not possessive. Outside the ceremony room, reporters were already gathering. How do they know? I whispered. Victor, Matteo replied. Or Ryan. What happens now? Now you decide whether you want to walk out beside me or leave through the judge's corridor with Margaret. I looked toward the main doors where camera flashes flickered through the glass. What would you prefer? I asked. I would prefer that the city sees you beside me. Why? Because anyone considering using you against me should understand the cost. The words should have frightened me. They did. They also made something bruised inside me feel less alone. Ask before you touch me, I reminded him. Matteo held out his arm. May I? I placed my hand in the bend of his elbow. You may. We walked into the cameras together. Matteo Romano's estate stood 40 minutes north of the city on a wooded ridge overlooking the Hudson River. High stone walls surrounded the property, though the house beyond them did not resemble the dark fortress I expected. The original structure was an old brick mansion with tall windows, ivy-covered walls, and wide terraces facing the water. Modern security cameras and black vehicles made the beauty feel guarded rather than peaceful. Staff waited inside the entrance hall. No one openly stared at the woman their employer had married that morning, but curiosity moved through the room like a quiet current. A woman in her early 60s approached first. She wore a plain dark dress and had thick gray-streaked hair twisted into a low knot. Mrs. Romano, she said, I'm Rosa Bellini, the house manager. I have worked for the Romano family since Matteo was a boy. Rosa's eyes moved over my damp dress and ruined bouquet. You've had a difficult day. Emma, I said. Please call me Emma. Rosa's face softened. Then you must call me Rosa. Matteo handed Gabriel his coat. Show Emma her rooms. Rooms, not room. I followed Rosa up a curved staircase and along a corridor lined with old family photographs. Matteo appeared in many of them, though he rarely smiled. In one frame, a younger Matteo stood beside a beautiful dark-haired woman, whose eyes looked startlingly gentle. His mother? I asked. Rosa glanced at the photograph. Elena Romano. She died when Matteo was 21. I'm sorry. So is Matteo, though Matteo would rather swallow glass than admit grief can survive that long. Rosa opened a pair of double doors. My suite included a bedroom, sitting room, bathroom, and small office. The windows overlooked the river. My suitcase had arrived before me, though I had not packed one. Margaret gathered your things, Rosa explained. Margaret is being taken home by another driver. Security will remain nearby, but no one will enter Margaret's property unless Margaret requests it. I walked to the bedroom door and tested the lock. Rosa noticed. Only you have the key, Matteo insisted. On the desk lay a second phone, a list of staff numbers, the security code for the private entrance, and a handwritten note. Nothing in this house is yours unless you choose it. Nothing in this room is mine unless you invite me. I read the note twice. The words were respectful. The fact that Matteo understood exactly what reassurance I needed was unsettling. In the wardrobe, my own clothes hung neatly beside several new outfits. Not glittering gowns or costumes, but practical dresses, tailored pants, sweaters, shoes, and a dark coat in my exact size. I didn't ask for these. No, Rosa said. Matteo ordered them yesterday. I turned sharply. Yesterday? Rosa's expression revealed that Rosa had said more than intended. Mr. Romano prepares for possibilities. He prepared a wardrobe for the possibility that my fiancé would abandon me? You should ask Matteo. I found him in his study on the ground floor. He had removed his jacket and rolled his sleeves to his forearms. Several phones lay on the desk. Noah stood near the window while Gabriel reviewed documents. They stopped speaking when I entered. Everyone out, I said. Gabriel looked at Matteo. Matteo nodded. When the room emptied, I closed the door. You bought clothes for me yesterday. Yes. Before Ryan left. Yes. Did you know Ryan would abandon me? Matteo's face revealed nothing. I knew Ryan had purchased a ticket under another name. I knew Ryan planned to move money this morning. I did not know whether Ryan would appear at the courthouse long enough to manipulate you into signing additional papers. You could have stopped him. I tried. Did you arrange any part of this? No. His answer came without hesitation. I did not tell Ryan to steal from you. I did not make Ryan leave. I did not interfere with your relationship. But you expected me to need clothes in your house. I expected today to end badly. I prepared for more than one outcome, including marrying me. Matteo stood. Yes. I laughed without humor. That should sound impossible, but somehow it doesn't in this house. I turned toward the door. Emma? Matteo's voice stopped me. The wardrobe was not intended to erase you. Wear your own clothes. Burn the new ones. Give them away. I do not care. Then why buy them? Because when people lose everything in a single day, practical needs are often the first humiliation they are forced to explain. I looked back at him. There was no mockery in his face. I know you think preparation is control, he continued. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is simply the only way I know to care for anyone. You don't know me well enough to care for me. Something painful moved behind his eyes before disappearing. Perhaps. The next morning I woke before sunrise. For one disoriented second, I expected to hear Ryan moving around the apartment we had shared. Then I saw the unfamiliar carved ceiling, the river beyond the windows, and the wedding ring on my hand. I pulled it off and placed it on the bedside table. Downstairs, Rosa was making coffee in a bright kitchen that felt more like a family home than the rest of the estate. You're awake early, Rosa said. I didn't sleep. Neither did Mateo. I did not ask how Rosa knew. I poured coffee and found Margaret already seated at the kitchen table. What are you doing here? I rushed toward her. Margaret stood and embraced me. Your husband sent a car. He is not... I stopped. Legally, Mateo was exactly that. Margaret leaned back. I wanted to see you before we went to the bookstore. We? Mateo entered through the side door wearing dark trousers and a charcoal sweater instead of a suit. Without the formal armor, he looked younger and somehow more dangerous. The lenders scheduled an emergency inspection at 9, Mateo said. Noah obtained an injunction at 6:30. Carter Books will not close today. Relief struck so quickly I had to grip the table. How? The company holding the debt is controlled by Victor through 3 shell corporations. Victor does not want a judge examining the transfers publicly. Victor agreed to a temporary freeze. You spoke to him? Yes. What did you offer? Nothing Victor is entitled to. Mateo poured coffee. You should see the store before deciding what must be repaired first. Carter Books occupied a narrow 4-story building on Mercer Street, squeezed between a bakery and an old cinema. The green-painted sign my father had carved still hung above the entrance. When our car stopped outside, all 22 employees were waiting on the sidewalk. Some looked frightened. Some looked angry. My assistant manager, Julia, rushed toward me. Emma, the bank sent people at 8. They said we had to hand over the keys. Not anymore. I looked at Mateo. He remained near the car, giving me the space to speak. The debt has been frozen. No one is losing a job today. Several employees began crying. Julia hugged me, then glanced at Mateo with open suspicion. Is it true? Julia whispered. The news says you married Mateo Romano. It's true. Why? Because my life has become completely unreasonable. Julia almost smiled. Inside, the bookstore smelled of damp plaster and old paper. Plastic covered the damaged shelves on the second floor. Construction had stopped 3 days earlier, when Ryan claimed a vendor dispute delayed payments. Mateo walked through the building with an engineer and contractor he had brought. He listened while I explained the history of every room. He did not interrupt. When the contractor suggested replacing the original oak shelves with cheaper metal units, Mateo looked at me. What do you want? The shelves restored. Then restore them, Mateo told the contractor. Mr. Romano, the cost... She answered the question. Later, I found Mateo alone in the children's reading room, examining a painted border of blue stars near the ceiling. My mother painted those, I said. Mateo's shoulders went still. Claire painted this room? You knew my mother's name. It was in the file. Of course. He looked at a framed photograph near the window. My mother stood in the center, smiling with paint on her cheek and a brush in her hand. My father had one arm around her. I was 8 years old, missing a front tooth, and holding a cardboard star. Mateo stared at the photograph for so long that my suspicion returned. Did you know her? He looked at me. No. The lie was quiet, controlled, and unmistakable. I stepped closer. That was too fast. What was? Your answer. Not every pause contains a confession, Emma. And not every denial is the truth. His eyes darkened. For a moment I thought Mateo would command me to stop. Instead, Mateo turned back toward the photograph. The deed will be transferred into a protected trust in your name, he said. Neither Ryan nor Victor will be able to use it as collateral again. That isn't what I asked. It is what I can answer today. I should have pushed harder. Instead, I watched Mateo stand beneath the stars my mother had painted, and I felt the first shape of a mystery I could not yet see. During the following week, my life divided into two worlds. Every morning, I worked at Carter Books while lawyers unraveled Ryan's fraud. Every evening, I returned to the Romano estate, where my name opened gates, silenced staff, and appeared beside Mateo's at formal dinners. Reporters followed me. Strangers analyzed photographs of my courthouse dress. Former classmates sent messages asking how long I had secretly been involved with Mateo. Ryan remained missing. The police claimed Ryan was a person of interest, but not yet charged. Mateo's security team knew Ryan had traveled through Montreal and then boarded a private flight. But Mateo refused to tell me how Mateo obtained the information. "You hired people to follow him?" I asked over dinner one night. "I assigned people to find stolen money." "That is not an answer. It is the answer you need. You don't get to decide what I need." Mateo set down his glass. "You are right. The immediate agreement disarmed me. I followed Ryan because Ryan worked with Victor. I need to know whether Ryan is merely a thief or an active threat. To me, to you, to Margaret, to my family now that you carry my name." I looked at the ring I had begun wearing in public. "Your name feels less like protection when you say it that way." "How does it feel?" "Like a locked door." Mateo considered that. "A locked door can keep someone inside or keep danger out. The person holding the key decides which." The next morning, the 2 guards stationed outside my private hallway were gone. Mateo said nothing about it. He simply changed the arrangement because I had spoken. That small act affected me more than the restored bookstore, the legal protection, or the cars waiting at every entrance. Power did not impress me. Power listening did. 10 days after the courthouse wedding, Mateo asked me to attend a dinner with 4 senior members of the Romano organization. "Is that a request or an instruction?" I asked. "A request. Do you want a wife beside you or a witness?" "Both." "At least you're honest." Rosa helped me choose a dark green dress from the new wardrobe. The dress was elegant but simple, with long sleeves and a fitted waist. "Mateo selected this one personally," Rosa said. "That is not persuasive." I did not mean it to be. Rosa fastened the back and met my eyes in the mirror. "You should be careful, Emma." "Of the men at dinner?" "Of Mateo." My fingers stilled around an earring. "Has Mateo hurt women before?" "Not in the way you are asking." Rosa sighed. "There have been other women brought into this house. Daughters of powerful families, women considered suitable for alliances. Mateo treated each woman with courtesy. Mateo gave each woman attention when politics required it. Then the negotiations ended, and the women left." "Were any of them his wife?" "No." "Then I'm already different." Rosa's expression remained sad. Different does not always mean permanent. The warning stayed with me as I entered the formal dining room. Mateo stood near the fireplace speaking with Gabriel. His gaze found me instantly. The conversation stopped. Mateo's eyes moved slowly from my hair to the green dress before returning to my face. "You look beautiful," he said. The directness warmed my cheeks. "Thank you. May I?" Mateo held out his hand. I placed my fingers in his. "You may." The guests arrived in pairs. Mateo introduced each man by role as well as name. His cousin and operations director, Enzo Romano. An old family attorney named Carlo Bianchi. A property developer named Stephen Vale. And Victor Salerno, who entered last with a smile that never reached his eyes. Victor was handsome in a polished, carefully preserved way. Silver touched the dark hair near his temples. His suit was navy, his voice smooth. "The famous bride," Victor said as Mateo introduced us. "Belhaven has discussed no one else for 10 days. Victor took my hand. Mateo's fingers tightened lightly against my back. "I hope the city finds a more useful subject soon," I replied. Victor smiled. "I doubt it. Mateo has guarded his private life for years, then suddenly marries a bookseller on the morning another man abandons her. That is not gossip. That is mythology." "Careful, Victor," Mateo said. "You have always confused your imagination with intelligence." Dinner began civilly and deteriorated by degrees. The men discussed a redevelopment project involving 6 blocks near the river. Matteo wanted to preserve an old public theater at the center of the district. Victor wanted it demolished and replaced by luxury apartments. I listened quietly until Stephen Vale opened a folder containing the property maps. One parcel number caught my attention. Carter Books maintained a city history archive in the basement, and I had seen the number on 19th century fire insurance maps. That parcel includes the old Mercer utility tunnel, I said. The table went silent. Victor looked at me. It does not. It did when the district was mapped in 1892. The tunnel runs beneath the theater and connects to 3 buildings marked for demolition. Stephen frowned. The environmental report mentions no tunnel. Then the report is incomplete. Matteo turned to Victor. Who commissioned it? A reputable firm. Which firm? Victor's smile vanished. Enzo opened another file. Salerno Urban Assessment. Matteo leaned back. Owned by your brother-in-law. Victor's gaze cut toward me. Your wife should be careful speaking about matters she does not understand. Matteo's expression became colder than I had ever seen it. My wife understood in 30 seconds what your consultants concealed for 6 months. Matteo, I murmured, uncomfortable with the sudden hostility. Matteo did not look away from Victor. Emma is not decoration at this table. Emma speaks whenever Emma chooses. The public defense sent a dangerous warmth through me. Victor recovered first. Then perhaps Emma should explain how a bookseller became qualified to challenge engineers. My parents helped build the Mercer Archive, I replied. The tunnel flooded in 1978. If excavation begins without reinforcement, 2 neighboring foundations could collapse. One belongs to a public school. Carlo Bianchi swore softly. Stephen started reviewing the maps again. The conversation shifted. Victor's development proposal did not survive the evening. After the guests left, Matteo led me into the library and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. You saved me from signing a contract that could have destroyed half a district, Matteo said. I asked a question. The correct question can be worth more than 100 answers. He handed me a glass. To my wife. I took it. Your temporary wife. Rosa's warning had escaped before I could stop it. Matteo's expression changed. Is that what troubles you? Should it? The agreement lasts 1 year. That is not what I asked. Matteo moved closer, stopping far enough away that the remaining distance felt deliberate. What did you ask? Am I another woman you brought into this house because politics required someone beside you? His eyes remained on mine. No. Rosa remembers women my family wanted me to choose. I chose none of them. You chose me because Ryan made me convenient. Convenience had nothing to do with it. Then tell me why. His jaw tightened. Not yet. Anger and something more vulnerable twisted together inside me. Every time I ask the question that matters, you give me half an answer. Because the full answer belongs to more than me. That makes no sense. I know. I set down the whiskey. I should go upstairs. Matteo did not block me. Emma, I turned. Matteo raised one hand, stopping before touching my face. May I? I should have said no. I should have remembered that I had been abandoned less than 2 weeks earlier. That Matteo kept secrets. That marriage had placed me inside a world I did not understand. Instead, I nodded. Matteo's fingertips touched a loose strand of hair near my cheek and tucked it behind my ear. The contact was almost nothing. My body reacted as if it were everything. His hand remained near my jaw. May I kiss you? He asked. The question came in the same low, controlled voice he used during negotiations, but his eyes were not controlled. I saw restraint, uncertainty, and a hunger that made my breath catch. Yes, I whispered. Matteo bent slowly, giving me time to change my mind. I closed the distance first. His mouth touched mine with surprising gentleness. For one suspended moment, the world became the warmth of his hand against my cheek and the faint taste of whiskey on his lips. Then the kiss deepened. Matteo's other hand settled at my waist without pulling me closer. The choice remained mine. I moved into him. A sound escaped his throat, rough and quiet. My fingers gripped the front of his shirt. When Matteo finally stepped back, both of us were breathing differently. That was not part of the agreement, I said. No. Was it politics? No. Convenience? Never. I searched his face. Then what was it? A mistake I would make again. I returned to my room with burning lips and a heart I no longer trusted. The next morning, Matteo behaved as though nothing had changed. Matteo left before breakfast for meetings in the city. I spent the day at the bookstore, trying not to remember how his hand had trembled once against my waist. By evening, anger replaced embarrassment. I had allowed myself to feel wanted by a man who still refused to explain why he had chosen me. When I returned to the estate, Margaret was waiting in the sitting room. "I need your help reviewing the old restoration invoices," Margaret said. "Some files were stored here after the flood." Gabriel carried in 2 archive boxes. Matteo entered behind him. Margaret looked up and the color drained from her face. "Elena," Margaret whispered. Matteo stopped. "What did you say?" Margaret stared at him with an expression caught between memory and grief. "You have Elena Romano's eyes." Silence filled the room. "You knew my mother?" Matteo asked. "Years ago?" Margaret looked at me, then back at Matteo. "Before Emma was old enough to remember." Matteo's face closed. "Margaret is tired." "I am not tired," Margaret snapped. "And you are still terrible at hiding fear." I looked between them. "What is happening?" Margaret pressed one hand to the box. "Your mother, Claire, and Elena Romano knew each other." "How?" "That is not a story for tonight," Matteo said. "Stop deciding that," I replied. Matteo's eyes flashed. "There are people still alive who could be harmed by careless details." "Careless?" Margaret stood. "Claire kept your family's secret for 20 years. Matteo glanced toward Gabriel. "Take Margaret home." "No one takes Margaret anywhere," I said. "Margaret decides." Matteo's control slipped. "Emma, this is not a debate." "Then you lied when you agreed Margaret would not become your prisoner." The words struck their target. Matteo went still. After several seconds, Matteo looked at Margaret. "Would you prefer to remain or return home?" "I would prefer tea," Margaret said. "Then I will go home." Rosa, who had appeared silently in the doorway, almost smiled. Margaret left an hour later without explaining further. Matteo disappeared into his study. I followed. "You knew my mother," I said after closing the door. "I knew of her. That photograph in the bookstore. You lied." "Yes." The admission hurt more than another denial would have. "Our agreement says I can leave if you lie about something affecting my safety or freedom. This truth affects both. Then tell me." "Not tonight." "Why?" "Because Victor now knows you identified the false survey. Because Ryan remains missing. Because if I tell you how your mother became connected to mine, you will try to protect people who do not deserve your risk. You don't know what I will do. I know exactly what you do when someone is in danger." His voice softened. "I watched you protect a frightened courthouse assistant while your own wedding collapsed. You were watching me before that." Matteo did not answer. I stepped back. "That is what I thought." I left the study before he could stop me. Over the next month, our marriage settled into a rhythm built from contradictions. Matteo hid truths but respected boundaries. Matteo controlled a room with one glance but asked before entering mine. Matteo sent guards with me, yet removed them when I said their presence frightened the children at the bookstore. Matteo could terrify bankers into delaying a foreclosure, but he spent an entire Sunday repairing broken shelves beside my employees without asking anyone to praise him. The first time Matteo arrived at Carter Books in jeans and a rolled-sleeve shirt, Julia nearly dropped a stack of novels. "Does he know how to use a screwdriver?" She whispered. "He knows how to make people disappear," I whispered back. "A screwdriver should be manageable." Matteo heard me. The corner of his mouth lifted. He worked for 6 hours. No photographers were invited. No donations were announced. At lunchtime, Matteo sat on the floor of the children's room eating pizza from a paper plate. A 7-year-old boy named Theo asked whether Matteo was a villain because Theo's father said men with bodyguards were usually villains. The room froze. Matteo considered the question. "Sometimes," Matteo said. "Do you fight heroes?" Theo asked. "Sometimes the hero and the villain depend on who is telling the story." "Emma says stories should tell the truth." Matteo looked across the room at me. "Emma is usually right." That night, I found him in the estate's music room. The room had been locked since my arrival. Now the door stood open. A grand piano occupied the center beneath white sheets. Dust floated in the moonlight. Matteo sat on the bench without playing. Rosa said this belonged to your mother. Everything in this room belonged to my mother. Why open it now? Because you asked why I keep doors locked. Matteo removed the sheet from the keyboard. My mother played when the house became too loud. After she died, silence felt more honest. I sat beside him. My father used to whistle while repairing books. After my parents died, I hated anyone who whistled in the store. Do you still? Only if they're off key. Matteo touched one piano key. The note echoed through the room. My mother believed music could make violent men remember they were human. Did it work? Temporarily. I looked at his hands. A faint scar crossed the knuckles of his right hand. Another disappeared beneath his cuff. Were you violent when she was alive? Not enough to save her. The answer opened a door and closed it at the same time. What happened? My father's enemies placed a bomb beneath her car. I inhaled sharply. Matteo. I was supposed to travel with her that morning. I changed plans. For years I believed being there might have changed something. It would only have killed you too. Logic and grief rarely speak the same language. I covered his hand with mine. Matteo stared at our joined hands as though touch offered without negotiation was unfamiliar. You are not what I expected, I said. What did you expect? A monster. You should not decide too quickly that you were wrong. And you shouldn't decide what I'm allowed to see. Matteo turned his hand beneath mine and threaded our fingers together. Agreed. We kissed again in the music room, more slowly than before. There was no contract in it, no audience, no fear of public humiliation. When Matteo's hand moved to my back, I leaned into him willingly. When the kiss became too intense and I pulled away, Matteo stopped instantly. He rested his forehead against mine. Tell me to leave, he whispered. I don't want you to leave. His eyes opened. That is not the same as asking me to stay. Then stay. Matteo remained in the music room with me until dawn, but Matteo did not take me to bed. We talked. Matteo told me that his father had taught him to negotiate before teaching him to drive. I told Matteo how Ryan once convinced me to cancel a holiday because the bookstore's expenses embarrassed him. Matteo admitted he had been engaged briefly at 26 to a woman chosen by his father. The woman ended the arrangement when she realized Matteo would never trust her enough to love her. Did you? I asked. Love her? Trust her. No. Do you trust me? Matteo's thumb traced the inside of my wrist. More than is wise. 2 weeks later, Matteo gave me a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. We were alone in the children's room at Carter Books after closing. Inside was an old green fountain pen. The gold clip was scratched. The barrel carried the initials CC, my mother's initials. My hands began to shake. Where did you get this? My mother kept it. Why? Claire gave it to her. You said you barely knew my mother. Matteo's face tightened. I said I knew of her. That was another half-truth. Yes. I placed the pen on the table between us. Tell me now. Before Matteo could answer, Gabriel entered the room. Gabriel never interrupted Matteo casually. We have a problem, Gabriel said. Victor has moved the charity gala to the Mercer Museum. Every major donor is already there. So are 3 reporters and 2 federal investigators. Matteo's expression turned cold. Why investigators? Someone sent them documents connecting Carter Books' restoration money to Romano Holdings. I stood. Ryan, or Victor using Ryan, Matteo said. The gala is being held for the bookstore district, I reminded him. If we don't attend, it looks like guilt. Matteo looked at Gabriel. Double security. Then Matteo looked at me. You are staying here. No, Emma. You don't get to publicly claim I'm your trusted wife, and then hide me whenever the trust becomes inconvenient. This is not inconvenience. This is danger. Then explain the danger. Matteo's jaw flexed. I cannot protect you in a room where Victor controls the exits. Can you protect me here, if the entire city decides I helped steal community money? Reputation can be repaired. Not by locking me away. Gabriel looked toward the door, pretending not to hear. Mateo stepped closer. If you come, you follow my instructions if the situation changes. If your instructions are about immediate physical safety, yes. If they are about controlling what I say, no. You negotiate like a criminal. I learned from my husband. The Mercer Museum glittered beneath chandeliers and camera flashes. The gala had originally been planned as a celebration of the River District's restoration. By the time we arrived, it felt like a public trial. Reporters shouted questions about Ryan, stolen funds, and my sudden marriage. Mateo offered his arm. May I? Yes. We entered together. Victor waited near the central staircase. Beside Victor stood Ryan. For one heartbeat, I did not recognize the man who had once slept beside me. Ryan looked thinner, paler, and far less certain than the voice in the recorded message. When Ryan saw Mateo's hand at my back, jealousy flashed across his face. Emma, Ryan said. Mateo's body became very still. Do you want to speak with him? Mateo asked me. Not I'll remove him, not stay behind me, Mateo asked. Yes, I said. Alone? No, Ryan's mouth twisted. You need permission from him now? I needed truth from you, I replied. You gave me a recording. I was trying to protect you. By stealing $286,000? That money was already gone. Ryan lowered his voice. Victor offered a way out. You would have lost the store eventually. You never understood business. So you forged my signature. I moved funds temporarily. You left me to be blamed. Ryan looked toward Mateo. Ask your husband why Mateo knew. Ask why Mateo happened to be at the courthouse. Ask how long Mateo had been waiting for you to become available. My stomach tightened. Mateo's expression revealed nothing. Victor approached with a champagne glass in one hand. Ryan is asking reasonable questions, Victor said. A woman should know whether her rescue was arranged by the same man claiming to save her. Do you have evidence? I asked. Victor smiled. Federal investigators do. Across the room, two men in plain suits moved toward Mateo. Mateo's hand touched my elbow. We are leaving. Running will make us look guilty. Staying places you inside Victor's performance. Mateo Romano? One investigator called. Conversations stopped. Cameras lifted. The investigator approached. We need to speak with you regarding funds transferred from Carter Books through Romano Property Management. My attorney will arrange an interview, Mateo said. Tonight, the man replied. Victor's satisfaction was subtle but unmistakable. Then a fire alarm erupted. Red lights flashed along the ceiling. Guests shouted. Museum staff began directing people toward the main exits, but Gabriel appeared beside us. Not the front, Gabriel said. There's a crowd waiting outside, and one of Victor's men is in security uniform. Mateo took my hand. Immediate safety, he said. Follow me. This time I did. We moved through a staff corridor, down a service staircase, and into an underground loading area where a black vehicle waited. The alarm still screamed above us. As we pulled away, I saw Victor standing on the museum steps beside Ryan, watching our car disappear. Was there really a fire? I asked. No, Gabriel replied from the front seat. The alarm was triggered manually. By you? Mateo looked out the window. Yes. You staged an evacuation. Victor placed armed men at 2 exits. My blood ran cold. How do you know? Because one of them worked for me before Victor bought his loyalty. I pulled my hand from Mateo's. Tell me the truth. Not in the car. Now. Gabriel raised the divider without being asked. Mateo turned toward me. Passing streetlights moved across his face, alternating darkness and gold. The legitimate businesses are real, Mateo said. The hotels, construction companies, security contracts, and property holdings employ thousands of people. They are also only part of what my family controls. What else? Private gambling. Untaxed imports. Protection agreements. Information purchased from public officials. Debts collected through methods Noah would prefer I not describe. I stared at him. Hearing the truth felt different from suspecting it. And violence? Yes. The simple answer made my stomach turn. Have you killed people? Mateo's eyes held mine. Yes, I looked away. The city moved beyond the tinted window as if the world had not changed. Ryan worked for Victor? Ryan began feeding Victor information about Carter books nearly a year ago. The bookstore sits above access to the Mercer utility tunnels. Victor wanted the property for more than redevelopment. Ryan promised Victor control after marrying you. So when I refused to sell, Ryan changed the plan. Ryan forged the loans, emptied the account, and intended to let the bank take the property. And you knew this. I knew pieces, not enough to stop every transfer. You could have told me months ago. I did not know how much Ryan had involved you. That's an excuse. Yes. The admission surprised me. Mateo leaned forward, forearms resting on his knees. I wanted to protect you without entering your life. Then Ryan accelerated the plan. By the time I had proof, your wedding was hours away. Why did you care whether I was protected? Silence stretched between us. Because of your mother. Tell me everything. Mateo looked toward the dark window. I was 19 when Victor's father ordered an attack on my family. My mother and I were traveling separately after a fundraising event. Our driver was shot near Mercer Street. I was wounded. Gabriel was not with me then. I ran because the men who attacked the car were still searching. Mateo's voice remained controlled, but I saw the memory in the tension of his hands. I entered Carter Books through the delivery door. Your mother found me bleeding in the basement. My breath caught. Claire hid me behind the old archive wall. Claire removed a bullet from my shoulder using instructions from an emergency operator who never learned my name. When police arrived, Claire told them I was a delivery worker injured during a robbery. When Victor's men came asking questions, Claire sent them away. Why would she do that? Because I was 19 and frightened, and Claire believed that mattered more than my last name. Mateo looked at me. My mother arrived hours later. Claire refused money. Claire refused protection. Claire made Elena promise never to bring violence near the bookstore again. I thought of the green fountain pen. My mother gave Elena the pen. Elena used it every day until Elena died. Why didn't my mother ever tell me? Because silence was part of the promise. And Margaret knew. Margaret helped clean the blood from the basement floor. I closed my eyes. My mother had once hidden a wounded Romano son beneath the same store where I spent my childhood. What happened after? My father promised that the Romano family would protect Carter Books. For years, we did quietly. After my parents died, the promise was neglected. I learned too late that Ryan had connected himself to Victor. That is why you investigated me. At first. And why you married me. Mateo's voice dropped. At first, I believed marriage would solve several problems. It would stop the Salerno alliance. It would protect Carter Books. It would place you beyond Victor's easy reach. It would repay a debt my family owed your mother. The words cut deeper than I expected. So I was a debt. No. A solution. Initially, yes. I turned toward the window so Mateo would not see how much that hurt. You should have told me. I was afraid you would refuse protection because you would believe accepting it dishonored Claire's refusal of money. You didn't trust me to decide. No. Mateo's honesty felt brutal. I trusted my ability to control the danger more than I trusted your right to understand it. Tears burned my eyes. Did you ever want me, Mateo? Or did you want the daughter of the woman who saved you? Mateo moved as if to touch me, then stopped. The debt made me look for you, he said quietly. The debt made me prepare to protect you. The debt did not make me notice the way you defend frightened people while your own heart is breaking. The debt did not make me wait outside the children's room because I wanted to hear you laugh. The debt did not make me open my mother's music room. It did not make me kiss you. And it did not make me fall in love with you. I turned. For the first time since meeting Mateo, fear stood openly in his eyes. You love me? Yes. But you still lied. Yes. You still treated my life like a problem you could solve without me. Yes. And you expect love to excuse that? No. The car entered the estate gates. Gabriel spoke through the intercom. Victor's men have been seen near Margaret's building. I forgot my anger. Margaret. A security team is already with Margaret, Mateo said. Margaret is safe. I want to see her. We are leaving the estate within the hour. Margaret is coming with us. Leaving for where? A property near Lake Ashford. Victor does not know the location. You already decided. Mateo's face tightened. Immediate safety. I remembered the condition I had negotiated. Fine. But Margaret chooses whether Margaret comes. Agreed. Margaret chose to come after someone fired 2 bullets into the bookstore windows before dawn. No one was injured. The shots were a message, not an attack. That distinction did little to comfort me. We traveled north in 3 vehicles while the city disappeared behind us. The Lake Ashford property was not another mansion. It was an old stone lodge surrounded by pine forest and water, isolated enough that the nearest town barely appeared on maps. Security remained mostly invisible. Margaret was given a room overlooking the lake. I was given a room at the opposite end of the 2nd floor from Mateo. The physical distance matched the silence between us. For 4 days, Mateo managed the crisis through phone calls and encrypted meetings. Investigators withdrew their immediate request after Noah proved the Romano transfer had been fabricated. Ryan disappeared again. Victor denied involvement in the shooting. Carter Books remained closed under police guard. Margaret spent mornings reading by the fire and afternoons refusing to treat Mateo with fear. You look terrible, Margaret told him at breakfast on the 5th day. Thank you, Mateo replied. That was not a compliment. I understood. Then sleep. I have work. Margaret looked at me. Emma, tell your husband to sleep. Mateo doesn't listen to me. That is clearly the problem. Mateo almost smiled, but the expression vanished when our eyes met. That evening, Margaret finally told me the part of the story Mateo had withheld. My mother had not only protected Mateo. Elena Romano had returned months later in secret. Elena and Claire became friends through letters. Elena donated anonymously to Carter Books' children's program. Claire wrote to Elena about raising me. Elena wrote about fearing the man Mateo would become after his father taught him to value control above tenderness. Elena believed you and Mateo might meet one day, Margaret said. Not romantically. Elena simply hoped. Claire's goodness would remain somewhere in Mateo's life. Mateo gave me Elena's pen, because Elena carried it until the day Elena died. Why didn't you tell me at the estate? Because Mateo was right about one thing. The old secret involved dangerous people, but Mateo was wrong to make the decision alone. Margaret placed the pen in my hand. Protection becomes a cage when the protected person is denied the key. The next morning, Noah arrived at the lodge carrying a leather case. Mateo asked me to meet in the study. Snow had begun falling outside, softening the lake and trees beneath white silence. Mateo stood near the window. Noah placed several documents on the desk. These are dissolution papers, Mateo said. My chest tightened. What? The marriage can be ended without contest. You will retain Carter Books, the restored funds, and every asset listed in the original agreement. The deed has already been transferred into a trust controlled by you and Margaret. The security assigned to you will remain for as long as Victor poses a threat, but the team will report to Noah, not me. I stared at the papers. You're divorcing me. I'm giving you the freedom I should have protected from the beginning. Is that what you want? Mateo's expression almost broke. No. Then why? Because you cannot choose me while every part of your life depends on my name. Mateo moved closer, but stopped several feet away. I told myself I was saving you. In truth, I was also arranging the world so you would have fewer reasons to leave. You agreed to my conditions. I obeyed the words and violated the spirit. Noah quietly left the room. Mateo continued. The investigation against you has ended. Ryan's second set of accounts has been located. Carter Books will reopen when repairs are complete. Margaret's safety does not depend on our marriage. Nothing requires you to stay. Except Victor. Victor is my problem. Victor made me part of it. Then you may decide how to respond without being my wife. I looked at the signature already written at the bottom of the papers. What happens to the Salerno Alliance? I rejected it permanently this morning. Your family council will remove you. Possibly. Your businesses? Some may be divided. You're risking everything. No. Mateo's voice softened. I risked everything when I confused keeping you with loving you. Tears filled my eyes. You said you would always protect me. I will. From a distance? If that is what you choose. And if I never come back? Mateo closed his eyes briefly. Then I will know that at least once in my life, I loved someone without owning the outcome. Mateo left the unsigned copies on the desk and walked out before I could answer. 2 days later, I returned to Belhaven with Margaret. Mateo remained at Lake Ashford. Gabriel did not accompany us. Noah arranged independent security and gave me one emergency number. The absence of Mateo's control should have felt like relief. Instead, every doorway seemed emptier. Carter Books reopened 3 weeks later. The bullet-damaged windows were replaced. The second-floor shelves had been restored. Employees returned. Children filled the reading room on Saturday. I stood beneath my mother's painted stars and understood that safety was not the same as home. Ryan was arrested the following Monday at a private airport outside Toronto. Ryan had attempted to access a deposit box using false identification. Inside the box, investigators found original ledgers connecting Ryan and Victor to the fraudulent loans, the fabricated Romano transfer, and the attempt to acquire the bookstore property. Ryan's attorney requested a meeting. I agreed only because Noah and Evelyn attended. Ryan entered the interview room in a gray detention uniform. The polished confidence was gone. "Emma," Ryan said, "I made mistakes. You planned to destroy my parents' store. Victor said the property was worth more than the business. I thought once we were married I could convince you to start over somewhere else. You thought stealing everything would make me easier to control." Ryan looked away. "Mateo controlled the situation too." "Yes," I said. "The difference is Mateo admitted it before losing me permanently." Ryan's face hardened. "He doesn't love you. Men like Mateo collect obligations. Your mother saved his life, so he took you as repayment." The words struck the old wound, but they no longer owned it. "Mateo gave me the choice to leave," I said. "You removed every choice I had." I stood. "Whatever happens to you now will be decided by the law. Not by Mateo, not by me." Victor's empire began collapsing within days of Ryan's cooperation. Banks froze accounts. City contracts were suspended. Several senior employees testified. Bianca Salerno publicly withdrew from the proposed alliance and released documents proving Victor had used the marriage negotiation to gain access to Romano companies. Victor was indicted for fraud, conspiracy, bribery, and attempted extortion. Mateo could have ended Victor through the violent methods whispered about in Belhaven. Mateo allowed the legal case to proceed. Noah told me Mateo had refused to interfere even when several Romano leaders demanded revenge. "Why?" I asked. "Mateo said you should never have to wonder whether choosing Mateo required accepting another body in a river," Noah replied. 6 weeks passed. Mateo did not call. Mateo sent no gifts, no instructions, no messages disguised as questions about security. The dissolution papers remained unsigned in my desk drawer. Every night I told myself I needed more time. Every morning, I looked toward the bookstore door when the bell rang. Margaret tolerated this for exactly 43 days. "You are waiting," Margaret said while we closed the store. "I'm working." "You alphabetized the same shelf twice." "The first arrangement was wrong." "Emma." Margaret leaned against the counter. "Ryan abandoned you because Ryan believed your love should make you smaller. Mateo nearly lost you because Mateo believed love gave him the right to arrange your safety. One man ran when you would not surrender yourself. The other man surrendered you when he finally understood he had to. That doesn't erase the lies. No. Or the criminal. World. No. Or the fear. No." Margaret picked up the green fountain pen. "But freedom is not the absence of difficult truths. Freedom is the ability to see them and still decide, what if I choose wrong again? Then it will still be your choice." I drove to Lake Ashford the next morning. No security vehicle followed me. Snow had melted from the lower roads, though ice still covered parts of the lake. Mateo's car stood outside the lodge. I found him on the dock wearing a dark coat, looking across the water. Mateo heard my footsteps but did not turn immediately. "Noah said you would not come," Mateo said. Noah was wrong. That happens rarely. I stopped several feet behind him. "You signed the papers." "Yes, I didn't." Mateo turned. The sight of him hurt. He looked thinner. Weariness shadowed his eyes. "Emma, do not decide what I came to say." Mateo remained silent. I walked closer. "I know why you chose me at the courthouse. You needed to stop the alliance. You wanted to repay a debt. You wanted to protect the daughter of the woman who saved you. You believed I could fit inside a plan you had already made. Yes, that was not love. No. It might have become possession if I had never challenged you. Pain moved across his face. Yes, but it didn't. Mateo's breathing changed. You listened when I asked you to remove guards. You restored my store without taking ownership. You asked before touching me. You told me the ugliest truth when lying would have been easier. Then you gave me the one thing a man like Ryan never gave me. What? The right to leave without punishment. I took the folded dissolution papers from my coat pocket. You chose me before I understood why. Now I am choosing you with the truth in front of me. Mateo stared at me as if hope was more frightening than any enemy. Do not choose me because Margaret is sentimental. Do not choose me because the store is safe. Do not choose me because you believe I became a good man in 6 weeks. I don't think you're a good man. One corner of his mouth moved. That is promising. I think you are a dangerous man who learned that protecting someone does not mean controlling every door. I think you still have work to do. I think I do too. I placed the dissolution papers in his hand. I will not return to the original agreement. Mateo's fingers closed around the pages. What are you offering? A real marriage. No deadline, no strategic purpose, no debt between our families, no expectation that I become blind to what you are. And what do you expect from me? Truth before protection, choice before control, no violence carried out in my name, no innocent person used as collateral. And when I ask a question that frightens you, you answer it anyway. Mateo looked down at the papers. You should demand more. I probably will later. He laughed then, a low, startled sound I had heard only a few times. The sound broke the remaining distance between us. I stepped closer. There is one more condition. Name it. Ask me. Mateo's expression softened. He placed the papers on the dock, then took my hands carefully. Emma Claire Carter, knowing who I am, knowing what I have done, and knowing that you are free to walk away, will you remain my wife? Yes. His eyes closed for 1 second. When they opened, the feared man Bellhaven whispered about looked almost defenseless. May I kiss you? Mateo asked. I slid my hands into his coat and pulled him toward me. You may. I kissed him before he could move. Mateo's arms closed around me, strong but not confining. The kiss held everything our courthouse ceremony had lacked: truth, fear, hunger, grief, and the knowledge that either of us could step away. Neither did. 1 year later, Carter Books reopened its entire second floor as the Claire Carter Children's Reading Center. The old stars remained across the ceiling. The Mercer Archive expanded into the restored basement, including the hidden wall where my mother had once sheltered a wounded 19-year-old boy. We did not place Mateo's name on a plaque. Some stories belonged to families before they belonged to the public. Margaret ran the reading program twice a week and terrorized contractors whenever a shelf appeared crooked. Rosa visited every Thursday and brought enough food to feed the neighborhood. Gabriel learned to read picture books without sounding like he was delivering a threat. Ryan accepted a plea agreement and received a prison sentence. Victor's companies were divided, sold, or placed under court supervision. Victor remained alive, powerless, and forced to watch the city learn exactly what Victor had done. Mateo stepped away from several of the Romano family's most violent operations. The change was neither instant nor clean. Men resisted. Old agreements had to be dismantled carefully. Mateo did not become harmless, and I never asked for a fantasy. Mateo became accountable. That mattered more. The Romano estate changed too. The music room remained open. Some nights, Mateo sat at the piano and played the few pieces Elena had taught him. Other nights, Mateo listened while I read inventory reports aloud, and pretended not to enjoy the ordinary sound of my voice. We argued. Mateo still tried to solve problems before telling me they existed. I still tried to carry everyone's pain until I became angry that no one noticed mine. Love did not cure either habit. Love made hiding them more difficult. On the first anniversary of our courthouse marriage, Mateo asked me to return to the same ceremony room. The clerk who had watched Ryan's chair remain empty was waiting. So were Margaret, Rosa, Gabriel, Julia, and every employee from Carter Books. This time there were flowers from the children's reading room, mismatched and bright. This time no contract waited on the table. Mateo stood at the front before I entered. Mateo wore a black suit, but the expression on his face held none of the cold control that had frightened the room a year earlier. In Mateo's hand was my mother's green fountain pen. The clerk smiled. "Are you ready?" I looked at the man waiting for me. Ryan had taught me that someone could promise forever and still disappear before the words were spoken. Mateo had taught me something harder. A person could begin for the wrong reasons, confront the ugliest parts of love, and choose differently when given the freedom to repeat the mistake. "I'm ready," I said. Mateo did not offer his hand until I reached him. "May I?" Mateo asked softly. I placed my fingers in his. "Always ask. Always answer." We signed new vows with Claire Carter's pen. When the clerk pronounced us married by choice rather than arrangement, Mateo waited. "May I kiss my wife?" he asked. I smiled through tears. Yes. The first time I went to marry a man, an empty chair taught me what abandonment felt like. The second time, Mateo Romano stood waiting before I even entered the room.